On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
To the entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out if they're an entrepreneur that is disrupting, something I think that's really important to think about is, those of us that can see the future, we have an idea, and the 99% of your industry or your sector that doesn't think that's a good idea, they could be right, but they could also be wrong.
Right.
And you really kind of have to be a little self-aware and a little delusional,
Yeah.
when you're going after, a big vision.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. Today, I've got Carson Combs on the King stage. My brother, Carson, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Chaz. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I was just going back and forth with you. We've got deer season that's amongst us. You were just hunting with your son, and I'm going to take my little kiddos out here this week here in Missouri. And so 'tis the season is the way I say it, right?
Yep. Bambi's dad. Bambi's dad.
Exactly. In fact, I'll take Grandpa too. He's probably bigger and burlier, and he just needs help anyway.
That's right.
Going to the end. So anyway, I'm just excited to have you here, Carson. Tell us what kind of business that you have.
Yeah, no, great. And excited to be here too, Chaz. Really appreciate the insight and help into other entrepreneurs. I think that's something that we all have. Rising tides, all boats rise. So our company is called Zenbuild. It's zenbuild.com. And what we built, my wife and I started our kitchen table many years ago. And we brought e-commerce into an industry that's operated the same way for 100 years plus, which is brick and stone products. And when we started, it was literally at the table. The dog was barking, the kids were little, and we were shipping samples out of our garage to different parts of the country. Fast forward, we had built out, rebranded, launched a new site in 2019, brought in some capital, continued to grow, and we've shipped, majority of our products are kind of thin brick and thin stone for anything from multifamily commercial projects to a homeowner that's doing a fireplace or backsplash.
Wow.
And so we've hit every state in the country. We have the joy of talking to, sweet little homeowners. It's their first project to, master craftsmen, who do this every day. And so it's been a wild ride and lots of fun.
Yeah, wild ride is probably an oversimplification for sure, but we're going to get into some of that. Before we do though, I got a question for you. It's really more so around, maybe your purpose or your why, but at this stage in the game, you kind of gave us a little bit of the backdrop, right? You had young kids. They've obviously gotten older. You've built a great business. I'm sure you have a great team. There's a lot of things in place, but you're still going after it. Just a couple of years ago, you rebranded, you brought in some capital, like you're really going for this thing, but you already had success. You're already there, quote unquote, maybe. Why are you still doing this? Why are you pushing so hard?
Well, I think that personally, I'm not speaking for others. I have so many friends that are entrepreneurs that have built businesses. Some have sold them, some are still in them. And I think when it comes down to it, is it about the money? Yeah, but it's really about something bigger. And that bigger portion is, what are you trying to change? How is whatever the process or product, how does it operate today? And why is that a problem? And why do you, in your vision, in your team, see that as something that can be changed and that you can make better?
Yeah.
And ultimately in our industry, it represents close to about $20 billion annually in the US. And when I started, I've been in the industry for close to 2 decades. Many colleagues, mentors, VPs, and CEOs of companies in our industry were like, this is the stupidest damn thing. Nobody will buy this product online.
Interesting.
And that it hurt, and you would have some that would tell you, oh, it's a good idea. And then you'd hear from another colleague who worked with them like, oh man, he thinks that's the dumbest shit ever.
Wow.
And you kind of had to have thick skin. I think anybody does that's trying to bring, not just disruption, but making something better. And ultimately, we're employed by our customers, and without the customer, we don't exist. And with thousands that come to us, a day right now, obviously we've figured out that the customers are there and they do need our help.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I think that I loved what you said. Obviously it's pretty simple about, it is about the money, but it's not. I think at some point we have that realization of what money can do for us or do for the team or do for the community, do for your family. It turns from a selfish perspective to what's the abundance, right? How can it overflow? But I also love the perspective that you just gave around the customer is who's paying your payroll, you,
Right.
you personally, as well as your team. But yeah, you've hit a disruption, probably a level, and you're doing things in an industry that's old. But I want to maybe get into some of those things. Before I do though, the why that you just gave me, the kind of it's a bigger picture. There's maybe a little chip on your shoulder. You kind of gave me a couple different angles there, which I think was really, really good. Has that always been like that? Did that not happen until that moment? Do you remember being a young kid thinking, I'm gonna, charge the world? Is it not about the money? Like, give us a little backdrop.
No. I mean, I think everybody, when you're growing up, you'd see different people you idolize, either, on a business level or as, an uncle, a father, a grandmother. Someone that was very important, the foundation of who I am today was my grandmother. And she had lost her first husband, remarried, lost that husband. And she was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And I was her only grandchild. And she owned a little grocery store in a small town in Ohio where I grew up. And, she worked her butt off. And eventually, some of the larger grocery chains came in and, she lost the business. But she never lost that drive. And so I remember helping her. When I was a little kid, this is so funny. She would sell vitamins.
Yeah.
And she would do mail order. This is before internet.
Right.
So people would mail a check and she would put vitamins in boxes. And I remember being over there on the weekend, helping her sort zinc from vitamin C or B12 or any of the stuff.
Awesome.
She just always had that. And I think a major impact for me and my wife, the company that I was working for in the industry had been bought twice. And the last buyout we went through was by Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
And I got that first paycheck and it was like employee 3,066 or something. And I was like, whoa, this isn't, I started with a family business and we had built it up on a team and did quite well. And so when that happened, in that same period, my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 and she was still in Ohio. We're in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And she called me the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And again, only grandson. She was like, Carson got cancer. And the doctor gave me 6 weeks. And I remember talking to my wife and said, hey, I'm going to drive up. I'm going to get grandma. And what vitamin? She's still doing the vitamin game. Wow. And I drove up to Ohio, packed up, everything we could in my F-150 and brought her down. And she was with us for almost 7 weeks and she passed. But this is prior to me going out on my own. And 2 important things. I remember sitting in the sunroom on a December day with her, and we had the windows open because it was rather warm in Chattanooga and there was a slight breeze. And I was talking to her about being in this big entity and how I just saw they weren't taking care of customers. They weren't operating efficiently. And I was like, I kind of want to do this on my own, but I'm scared. And she told me, honey, she was like, I've had a couple businesses. She was like, just go do it. The worst thing that can happen is you fail. And if you were good at what you did, the company you're with or a company similar would hire you back. And it was weird. I'll give you one other point too, but what was weird is I've found that borrowed confidence is something that's so important.
Yeah.
And friends of mine that have started their own business since I went out on my own, I had one that texted me 2 weeks ago, general contractor here in Chattanooga. His name's Robert Roberts Construction. And 7 years ago, he went out and started his business. And he texted me on the 7th year anniversary. Early in the morning, he said, man, I just wanted to tell you, I was thinking about you this morning. 7 years ago today is when you and I had the conversation. I was going to go work for somebody else and I went out on my own. And he was like, my life has changed and, my family is better because of it. And I think that borrowed confidence that my Grandma Betty, God bless her, gave me is something that I try to pass on to other entrepreneurs. So
yeah, so good.
On that side, there's that. And then the Zenbuild, what happened when I left and went to start my first company, the initial company I started with, the family business, when they sold the first time, I'd signed a non-compete. Mm-hmm. And so they were bought, signed a non-compete. Several years later, they were bought by Berkshire Hathaway. And Berkshire Hathaway was like, oh, hell no, you're not going to start your own business. And so in my early 30s, I was sitting in court against Berkshire Hathaway. My wife and I had sold everything, moved to a small condo, and it was scary as shit, Chaz.
Yeah.
And so for the entrepreneurs and, the people that are listening, to the podcast, I think something that's important to remember is you talked about a chip on your shoulder. I think that's part of it, but I think it's bigger than that. You've got a vision. There's a lot of scary things. There's a lot of worries, cash flow. How are we going to do this? I've heard the analogy multiple times, being an entrepreneur, starting your own business is like jumping off a cliff and assembling your parachute as you fall down. I think that's so accurate because there's a lot of times where you go, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing. And all you do is you just take the next step and you just keep going and surround yourself with people that make you better and challenge you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're 100% right. We're just coming off of a weekend. Gathering the Kings started as a mastermind group even before the podcast. And so we've got 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners that came actually to my house here in Kansas City. We had a phenomenal weekend, hit the Chiefs game. It was awesome. But I say all that to say that when you walk away from a weekend like that, it's borrowed confidence. Like you just said, I've never had it said like that, but that's exactly what it is. It's borrowed confidence. It's, I got a chip on my shoulder. I want to go do this thing. But when I lock arms with a community, like you said, even at the beginning, you're like, rising tide raises all ships. Like the power in that, it's unseen. You can't measure it. But it's literally what propels guys like you and I forward, because we're going to go far. Like we're just drivers. We're going to do the thing. But how much more is the thing impactful to us, our families, our communities, when we're pushed, encouraged, challenged from the guys and ladies around us that are just as sharp and doing their thing as well. So I just appreciate that perspective. I think that Grandma Betty or another business owner, even the guy that you encouraged to get in business, maybe you're further down the road. I guarantee you, when you saw that text message, that fired you up that day.
Oh, it absolutely did. And I didn't text him. I called him and I was like, your dumbass was going to go work for somebody else. And he started laughing. And I think, you talk about the group that you were just with, my, not team, my queen, my wife is very much a giver of borrowed confidence to me, and she worked in the business, and, that's something that's challenging for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, you've got somebody that has the same vision. That's right. And is going to work just as hard. And when you have your low points, hopefully they're going back and forth. So when one of you's down, the other one's up. And, whether that's a spouse or it's, a business partner or, a head of sales or anything else, putting those people, in place with you along your journey, because you can't do it alone. There's no way you can do it alone.
Yeah. I loved how you brought that into the marriage or the home, because support sounds like submission. And we know how that sometimes can create some controversy. But the reality of it is that we each support, and that we each, like my wife and I, we have lanes. And so there's things that I submit to her and there's things that she submits to me. And that just seems so like our culture has just, toiled that word. But I love how you applied borrowed confidence to it, because that's really what it is. I don't have to necessarily, like, if I'm feeling whatever sort of way and I can get some borrowed confidence, if my wife's a giver, as you said, of borrowed confidence, I can go charge the hill the next day, and I will. You probably are the same way. Look, if she just breathes a little bit of that borrowed confidence, I'll go beat my chest and run the hill over and over and over again.
It's like McConaughey on Wolf of Wall Street.
Dude, yes. This past weekend we did a cold plunge, and we were a little odd for the moment, but it's camaraderie. It's in that moment of like, yes, you just breathed that into me, and now I'm freaking fired up. So let's go. I just appreciate that perspective. I want to get into some practicals here. Early on in the business, if you can, think back to a thing that you decided on, maybe even pre-$1 million revenue. I want to know of a good decision, something super clear that you can look back on and go, boom, I would do it over and over again. And that's something that the listener can maybe take away.
I think a really good decision. There were a lot of bad ones.
Agreed.
One of the good ones that kind of comes to mind right now, and it applies back to kind of your tribe, your team, there was a gentleman that I had worked with at the small company we started with, and he kind of went to a different company after the buyouts.
Sure.
And I went to him. He was on the logistics side. He was older than me and still on our team and great guy. He's a good general. And I went to him and said, look, I've got this vision, and, nobody's doing it in our industry. People are doing it outside the industry. And I went to him and said, I need help. And I think that comes back to the good decision, which I think all entrepreneurs should be willing to really look at and say, I can't do this on my own. I need help. And that's a hard thing it's a weird balance, Chaz, in between. Okay, entrepreneur, it sounds like it's one person. You get
Ego.
images of, Elon, Steve Jobs. Steve had Woz. Elon's got somebody, I don't know who it is.
You got a lot of people. And
that is something you really need to be able to be vulnerable to hear no or yes. I believe in where you want to go, and I'd like to be part of it. And here's how I contribute. And I think that is something that I think would be helpful, and it was a good decision and has bared fruit, for us and our company, is being willing to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And you gave a couple of different on-ramps there. I just want to highlight it for the listener. Not only someone that you would maybe consider bringing on to the team or bringing on as a partner or Grandma Betty or your spouse or another entrepreneur. Like, there's a lot of different on-ramps there of asking for help. And maybe it's tactical, maybe it's mindset, maybe it's borrowed confidence. Like, there's, I think, a lot of different on-ramps, and then there's a lot of different passing back and forth of what can happen in those moments. But you're right. I think that every entrepreneur can take that away. Why do you think in that moment, your instinct was to go ask for help and not try to figure it out yourself?
Because I knew that the value of my time was not handling that portion of the business. And I also knew that the expertise was so much more in depth. We comedically call him, our logistics Jedi. He's our Obi-Wan in that field. And while I knew that, we could do it, we could get somebody else, I trusted him. And I was like, man, if I can add this building block into our team, it can help us excel faster. And I think that's important. And it's scary when you're making your first hires, because you're like, oh God, here's my catch runway, my burn's going to go up, but what can I do with that time that I would have been involved in helping with that? Yeah. Well, I can move that over to help propel the business faster through sales and dealing with customers.
What would you say to the guy listening right now who hears you, but he's not hearing you? You started thinking as an architect, how do I architect the team? How do I put people in place? Right. But so many people, including many of our listeners today listening to you right now, they just got started, right? Which is fine. That's good. Better than not.
Yeah.
But they're stuck in I'm doing everything. Maybe because they're nervous about hiring somebody. Maybe because they just don't know any different. They haven't thought of architecting, or maybe from like an investor perspective, they're more thinking just, I got to feed my family, so I need to go do a project or service a marketing client or whatever. What would you say to that guy who didn't have that mindset? How does he need to get there?
I'm in the construction field, right? And in background, I've seen large scale projects being built, multi-$100 million projects, corporate offices, hotels, schools. I saw on the job site that, for our side, it's a mason that's doing the block, that's doing the brick, that's doing the stone. Well, then you had the plumber that's doing the plumbing. You had the electrician running the wire. You had the sheetrock company doing the sheetrock. And then you had the general contractor and their team of the superintendent and a project manager. They were essentially managing all of those groups. And so for the entrepreneur that's going, hey, I got to do this because I got to get, some money in to pay my bills, you got to take calculated risks. And if you're building a big building and you've never done electrical work, you're going to sub that out to somebody. You're not going to do it yourself because it gets you behind schedule. And it really, really, ultimately would be horrible for the project if somebody didn't know what they were doing, tried to do it, or knew just a little bit. You turn a light switch on and it would turn the fax machine power off in the other room or something. So I would, that's how I look at it, Chaz, or how I might express it is, sub out the stuff that doesn't drive your revenue and do that as soon as you possibly can.
Hey, Chaz Wolfe here. As many of you know, I have been on an absolute mission to help entrepreneurs from all across the country in many different industries level up their game and grow their business and intentionally connect with other entrepreneurs. We do that obviously through the podcast, but we also have a peer-to-peer mastermind group specifically for 7 to 9 figure business owners. We are bringing some of the best and most successful entrepreneurs and minds together in a regular and a super intentional way to not only grow our network, but to be able to leverage. And at a certain point in business, success becomes about leverage, leveraging time, leveraging resources, leveraging key relationships. This is exactly what we're doing inside of the peer-to-peer mastermind group called Gathering the Kings, specifically for 7 to 9 figure business owners. So if that's you, if you're ready to level up your 7 to 9 figure business even to the next level and get around other big hitters just like you, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com, fill out a short application, and it'll come to an application call with me, and I want to chat with you to see if it might be a good fit. Talk soon.
Yeah, the way that you put it on a large scale of if you were, a GC running a $150 million project, zero chance you or one of your superintendents is going to go install the electrical. Zero chance.
Correct.
And so the gap there obviously is that the guy who's listening doing 600,000 and he's got a $10,000 project or a $40,000 project is just so much smaller. So he thinks, well, I'll get it done myself. It's the same principle though, right? Is like, is he really the best fit? Is it going to keep it on schedule? Does that really the best use of his time? Could he be going and getting another $40,000 project while someone else is installing the wiring? Right?
Yeah. I would say, I just add on or throw onto that, and we had a conversation with either a venture capitalist or, a contractor. I can't recall. It was maybe a month or two ago. And it was about time. And so what Zenbuild does is we compress time, not only for a homeowner, but also for the contractor. And so I'm pretty sure it was a contractor. He was like, man, I spend half my week, driving to physical stores to get samples to take them back to my clients. And he was like, it's cutting my productivity down horribly. And I don't have anybody else to do it because I've got guys working in the field and then I own the company. And so he said, I can get on, my iPhone and I can get the samples, I can order, or I can get the estimate right off Zenbuild and I can send it to the customer and let them pick it. And he was like, that just saved me, 4 hours, on Monday that I can be going out and getting more business. I think that's something for the entrepreneur that's doing the $40,000 job. They've got to kind of look at, what's my time and what's the multiple if I was doing something else and kind of looking at, and it's hard, man. I mean, you want to operate your business at 100% the way you want to do it. And sometimes it's got to be okay to be like, all right, this team member is going to be able to do it 80% of the way I would do it. But I'm able to take that time and drive the business forward, whether it's in sales, whether it's in meeting with partners, vendors, whatever your business applies to.
Yeah. Carson, I heard a new kind of mindset on this 80%. I've talked about this for many years. You stop looking for your 100% is not their 100%. Like we got to get in the right mind space here. But hiring somebody at 80% sounds like maybe lowering a standard. And so this thing that got presented to me maybe last week or week before, I can't remember, but he said, look, if you're doing it all, literally you might be better of that one task than your employee. But if you're doing 17 other things also, zero chance you're at 100%. He's like, most likely you're actually at 25, 30, maybe 40%. And so their 80% is literally double as good as you. So it was just like, wow, it was like a really good perspective. Obviously I'm in agreement, I've been teaching the same thing, but it's like, that was a new perspective. What do you think about that?
No, that's great. You say 14 different things, try like, 80.
Yeah.
And so, when you think about that, I think that's where you also, if you think of it that way, and then you go, look, where do I make the biggest impact?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what you've got to always kind of keep in mind on the bigger vision is, do I need to be spending my time on that? Or do I need to empower my team members and go, look, I got your back.
Right.
Here's our values. Here's our vision. If you execute on that, whether it's 80, 70, 90,
Yeah.
you're doing what we need you to do. And you're representing myself, my wife, our shareholders and our business. And I think empowering the people on your team is really an important thing too. And it's hard to coach people, man. I mean, because some people have it, and have that drive to wake up every morning like, I'm unemployed. I got to make money today. I think that's the entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, others are like, okay, I'm gonna go to work, hour lunch, be 4:00, 4:30, start checking social media, not really be effective. It's the guys and gals that give as much as they can, while they're on your clock or, helping you build your business.
Yeah, 100%. Carson, let's flip the coin here. Let's talk about a bad decision that you made, something that didn't work out at all. We can.
Oh God. That list, that's a big list. I think something that I regret in the business is we're really stuck in a kind of a funnel, if you will, in disrupting what Zenbuild essentially does is the industry has about 1,500 physical distributors all across the country.
Okay.
And our vision was huge, right? We're like, all right, contractors, B2B, B2C is going to come to our site. They're going to buy product.
Right.
Well, what I underestimated were the manufacturers of the product, who rely on that distribution network. I thought they'd be like, hell yeah, we're going in on the internet with Carson and Sharon and the team. This is awesome. They've got thousands of shoppers a day on their site. My physical stores might have 5 people walk in a day. What I underestimated, what was a bad decision that we pivoted from was we were trying to, supply a full bed depth brick, like cladding brick. And I only had a couple manufacturers that were like, yeah, we'll do that and let you bypass our, disrupt, the distribution network. And I just kept hammering, being in the industry for 2 decades, I know the CEOs and the VPs of sales of all the companies. And just kept hammering. I'm like, hey, I've got this customer in Phoenix that wants to buy, $100,000 worth of product. And the manufacturers were like, no, it's got to go through this guy. I'm like, well, that guy didn't procure it. It came in through our efforts in marketing and the platform. And we beat that horse for so long. And we finally got to the point that we went, what products would they let us sell? And what market is big enough within it? And so we pivoted over to the thin veneer products, the thin brick and the thin stone, and made that customer journey so freaking amazing.
Yep.
That the experience online and on Zenbuild was so much easier and so much faster and transparent in pricing.
Yeah.
That I wish we would have done that earlier instead of trying to just take on, the Goliath of we want to do all this and just go and go and go.
Yeah.
The vendors and partners on our platform, which we have over half the industry on our platform now, from, back when we were trying to do that, we were maybe 3%.
Right.
If we would have done that earlier, we would have been further down the road than we are. And I think that time, I'd love to go back and talk to younger Carson, at 33, 34 and be like, do this. And this is why, because you're going to spin your wheels. And to the entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out if they're an entrepreneur that is disrupting, something I think that's really important to think about is, those of us that can see the future, we have an idea, and the 99% of your industry or your sector that doesn't think that's a good idea, they could be right, but they could also be wrong.
Right.
And you really kind of have to be a little self-aware and a little delusional, when you're going after, a big vision.
Yeah, you're right. And so it obviously puts you in a position now where you say you regret, but it's what got you to dial in to what you have now. And so sometimes you have to be a little delusional to take that risk of let's take on everything in order to then finally get to where you are now. So I just appreciate both of those perspectives. Did you feel that like through that process of niching down or dialing in, obviously you said it allowed you to like really, really tighten up your customer experience. Was there any other benefits that you could think of? I mean, we got lots of different industries listening of focus or of niching other than being able to speak directly to your customer through the process and really make it like this beautiful thing? Or is there something else inside of that you want to mention?
Maybe ask me that in a different way, Chaz. I want to make sure I understand that to give you the best
Yeah,
Give
yeah.
us
So,
feedback.
so what the pivot that you made was you niched, you narrowed your focus of product, which then allowed you said, to be able to make this super dialed in customer experience.
Mhm.
Was that the biggest thing that came out of that? Was there anything else that came out of you narrowing the focus?
Yes. Yeah. The opportunities in narrowing the focus that would have presented themselves that were outside of just our core, function as a business started to present themselves. And that wouldn't have if we hadn't have narrowed and really fine tuned, because our partners and vendors and even customers started seeing how easy it was. And then our growth started, and then our reach got bigger. And so, on the manufacturing side, we had one manufacturer that was like, we've never had we know you guys are e-commerce and you're servicing the entire country and not just, Kansas City, one certain market. Like, you guys grew, nearly 90% 1 year over year in product, and you're shipping product into places that we don't even have distribution.
Right.
And that came with an opportunity, which we then later developed into, a marketing service agreement where, hey, we've got our spend that we put out on marketing. If you want to, it's Grandma Betty, it's a grocery store. You want to put, your product, on that front shelf, there's some payment that comes along to that. In that marketing service agreement, allows our manufacturers to get more of their product out to the customers that are shopping, on the internet. So this product niche. And I think that was an opportunity that wouldn't come, because we weren't even, we weren't looking at that. We were just like, hey, we're going to do this, and this, charge forward. And I think that is definitely something that came out of narrowing focus.
Yeah, it's funny. I want to point this out for the listener. Maybe they felt the same way listening, but you said you narrowed, meaning you took away things, and what was left was more opportunity,
right?
Which is a conundrum in itself. But how that works is that because you narrowed it in, because you were able to speak a very specific language, or because you were able to solve a very specific problem, then the opportunities came out because they understood. It was so dialed in. They were like, oh, I see what you're doing here. I need to get on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Where before taking on the whole giant, it's kind of like, yeah, we've already got to kind of get this figured out. We don't really have a problem. You're not really solving anything for us. If anything, you were making it harder for them because they already had these relationships with the distribution network.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And that's what scared them. I mean, on the manufacturing side, they didn't see it, they didn't see us as a painkiller. The customer is in pain. The customer is taking so much time. It's costing them money.
Yeah.
They're like, our customer is the network, the distribution network, not the end user. And so that end user, I can't remember which book talked about Steve Jobs always put an empty chair, right, at Amazon's table. Who's that represent? That represents the customer. It's like the customer wasn't in, our industry at the level they should have been, in my opinion. And so focusing on that customer and how we make it easier in the niche created so much more opportunity, because it was like messaging clear. And then the manufacturers were like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
We're on board with that. And so again, assembling that parachute, as you're going off the cliff, that's one of the things that happened while we were assembling the parachute.
Yeah, it's so good. I want to switch over to our speed round. I'm going to come at you in a little different angle with some questions.
Yep.
My first question is around KPIs.
Yep.
I'll give it to you a couple different directions or a couple different ways. I'm really wanting to know your most important KPI, but I'm going to say it as if you could only track one forever and ever. What would it be?
Customer conversions daily.
Okay. Give us a little behind the scenes on that.
So if I look at the amount of people that are coming to site and we're not having, what our benchmark is for transactions a day, that's a problem.
Yep.
And that's where I know we need to focus in, because we've got the customers coming. If they're not purchasing, why? Is it something we've done wrong? Is it an update we've done that makes it harder to check out? Are we not providing enough information? The customers are your lifeblood.
Yeah. And for the listener too, your e-commerce. And so that conversion tactic is good. And maybe they're not e-commerce, but it's a pipeline KPI, right? Find out how many people are coming to the pipeline, but then nobody's coming out of the pipeline. There's an issue with the pipeline.
There's something wrong with the pipeline. Yeah, that's exactly right.
It's good. Carson, what book would you recommend for a business owner trying to grow?
I mean, I got tons. Can I give you two, Chaz?
Yeah. Give us two.
Kind of on the macro, just theory, philosophy side. There's a book called The Alchemist
Okay.
by Pablo Coelho, I believe. I even have my kids listen to it. And it's essentially, the gist is what you're looking for may be right where you're at. What you're building and what you're trying to find might be right where you're at, not out in the desert or in another country. On the business side, Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, I think I've read it 6 times, dude. When he gets the tax bill for importing shoes and it's like $70 million. And I can just imagine him in Oregon opening that letter going, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How are we going to get through this? I think that is a phenomenal for an entrepreneur at any level, whether it's, 6 figures or, 10 figures. I think that's a great book.
Yeah, and it's entertaining. It's easy. Although thick, it's an easy read.
Yeah.
Okay. What are your thoughts on intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs specifically?
I think if you don't do it, you're missing a lot of, we call it our tribe. I've got a workout tribe. My wife's in CrossFit people.
Yeah.
That's my workout tribe. I've got my entrepreneur tribe, buddies that own factoring companies, logistics companies, restaurants, some that I don't even know what they do. John's a buddy of mine. They extract THC from hemp and wholesale.
There you go.
It's a cool stuff, but we essentially are all, doing the same thing in different areas. And so the pain points, I would encourage anybody to, get a group. I've got a buddy of mine today, Mark Baker, entrepreneur. I think he sold 2 businesses. He was like, lunch. And I'm like, no, man, I'm busy today. And he was like, I miss us. But started laughing. I was like, I miss us too, Baker. Those are the people you call on the high days, Chaz, and on the days where you're going, what the hell am I going to do? And Zenbuild's had those, as we started and, as we continue to grow, and you've got to have somebody that's like-minded.
Yeah.
They can go, man, it's going to be all right. Have you thought about this? Or just take a breath. Calm down. So I think it's very important to have that
those
group.
things that we already know. But we're so far into the forest, we can't see the trees. I've got one more question here for you.
All right.
Carson, if you could whisper into the younger Carson's ear, what would you say?
Wow. That's a great question, Chaz. How young am I? How young am I going?
That is a great follow-up question, and I'm going to let you determine that.
I think part of the answer would be trust your gut and take the step. I wish I would have started sooner. You learn your skill, right? Which is important. What the 10,000 hour rule. I could have started so much sooner than what I did, but I was scared, and I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to ask for help. I just kind of went to work, killed it, was a top performer. I would have told myself, trust your gut, and take action.
Yeah, it's good. Carson, how can the listener find you, whether they need to order some product from your website, or maybe they just want to reach out and connect with you as an entrepreneur? How can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. You'd be happy to. Best way to get me is email address. My personal email is Carson, Carson, at Zenbuild.com. And then our website, of course, is Zenbuild.com. If you type in Zen or Build or Thin Brick or Thin Stone, we don't pop up. Email me because I pay Google a shit ton of money. And so I need to make sure that we are, but
in every area of the country.
In every area of the country. So, and I think that it's good. And, by no means, I think any of us, on the entrepreneurial side that have built businesses and, have scaled would say we don't have all the answers. I've got 2 buddies I know that are billionaires that have done extremely well. And they're like, that's a good idea. Or, man, that's a stupid idea. Or, I don't know about that. And I think that's, that's something that we all should do, to help each other. And so, I'd welcome any of the listeners, especially if they're in the construction side, we probably have a lot in common. Feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk to you.
That's right. Well, you've been incredible. Thank you for giving of your time and your experience and knowledge. We wish you nothing but blessing on your family and your business, your team, all the people that you're affecting across the country. Thank you for being here, Carson.
Chaz, it was awesome. Pleasure, buddy.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more
to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.